This is a spoiler video. Consider this your major spoiler warning. We are going to be breaking down that big ending, talking to the cast and executive producers, and of course talking about what we want to see in season 2.
Follow.
We'll start with that explosive ending that saw the Darkling emerging from the Shadowfold with these mysterious creatures following behind him. I mean, you didn't think that the Shadowfold would defeat him. He created it, remember?
I made something.
Executive producer Eric Heiserer confirmed to us that the creatures with the Darkling at the end of the series are actually Nichivoya, which are first introduced in the second Shadow and Bone series, Siege and Storm. The Darkling creates them out of Merzos, which is essentially like Grisha dark magic, and it's going to be a very big deal that he has those. Executive producer and author Leah Bardugo confirmed that the reason they wanted to show Nichivoya in season 1 rather than waiting until season 2 was to show everybody that the Darkling is actually not weakened at the end of the season, and he's not the one at a disadvantage as we go into season 2.
I love the idea of taking this character that was already powerful and giving him access to an entirely different level of power, especially because you think, oh, he's emerged weakened. Surely he will be bested. No, the Darkling has been around a very long time, and he has more than one trick up his sleeve.
Of course, that is super crappy news for Alina, who thinks the Darkling is dead and has decided to go underground with Mal to figure out what their next steps should be. Executive producer Eric Heiserer told us about how the power of Murrows of a Stag is actually going to inspire Alina's next steps, and here's what he had to say about what we could potentially see in season 2.
Because she claimed the power of the stag in the fold there in the final episode, she's going to know the extent and limit of her power, and she'll have a sense of if that is enough to tear down the fold or not. And that will put her on a path, perhaps, to find out about the other amplifiers.
So we know where Alina might start if we get a season 2, but what about the Six of Crows? We did not forget about our favorite thieves. At the end of season 1, we find Jesper, Inej, and Kaz on a boat back to Ketterdam, along with Nina, who has just sent Matthias to jail in order to save him from the Grisha who are hiding out in Fjerda. Now, for those of you who haven't read Six of Crows, first of all, love yourself and do it. But secondly, cover your ears because we're talking about major book spoilers. The fact that Nina has now found herself with Kaz, Inej, and Jesper puts them at a pretty similar place to where Six of Crows starts. So we have to wonder, are we getting ready to see the Ice Court break in because Nina starts to work with Kaz in order to help her get Matthias out of prison? Heiserer could not confirm that they're going to do the Ice Court break-in if they get a season 2, but he does want to adapt that storyline at some point. And even if we did, that would bring up one major complication. Because the plot of Six of Crows and the reason that the crew has to break into the Ice Court, the most secure building in all of Fjerda, is because of a drug called Jurda Purem. Jurda Purem gives Grisha their powers on steroids. However, it also makes them into debilitated drug addicts. Do we really want that in a world where the Darkling still exists? Lee Bardugo was quick to say that that is not an ideal situation.
That's one of the reasons that we were careful to bring the characters together, but to make sure that the plots stayed separate. And why we decided to toy with the timeline. Because quite honestly, then we would get into a situation where instead of having lots of road with all of the books, we would have blown up the road that leads to the rest of the books. So we had to sort of make sure that we were fighting one enemy at a time.
If the Darkling is the main villain going forward in the series, then it might be a while before we see the actual events of Six of Crows adapted. That doesn't mean that the characters are going away though, so we're just gonna get more story and more time with this crew, which we can't argue with. Let's go back to the Darkling for a second, because in our preview video, the Darklina stands came for me and borderline accused me of being a liar. Listen, I'm not unsympathetic to the Darklina cause. I just also have to admit that it's not the healthiest relationship, and he might be a better partner if he talked to a professional about his feelings and all that repressed anger that he's dealing with. And you know what? Ben Barnes agrees. I came with the receipts. Aaron, roll the footage.
Your t-shirt. I've just noticed it.
What is it?
It says, fine, make me your villain.
So good.
So we know who you're shipping.
That's not entirely, in my teens, absolutely yes. As an adult, I'm like, sir, please get some therapy and then maybe we can talk about it. Like, no one has time for that.
I would love to see Kerrigan in therapy in season 2.
Who would be the Darkling's therapist out of all the characters? Milo the goat.
Milo the goat, yeah, definitely.
I did talk to Ben and Jesse about what made the Darkling and Alina's connection real beyond the fact that he was manipulating her.
They are connected and they are, two sides of the same coin. And I think from the moment they meet, there is like a level of them being equals, and she's never felt like she belongs anywhere. But of course, he completely manipulates and betrays her, which was, it was really exciting for us to play because it just, this relationship is so up and down.
Ben Barnes agreed that the Darkling's intentions for Lena weren't exactly on board, but there was a raw attraction, and I would not deny you that soundbite.
That her pure joy and literal sunlight, that has its effect on Kerrigan. He's wrong-footed by her in that way, and I think that he is trying to manipulate her, and he absolutely is, and that's entirely unforgivable given that she doesn't have agency in the relationship because he's so powerful and has all the status and the power, and he abuses it. However, I think that he does, fall for her in some way. And does that make it more forgivable or not? More comprehensible the way he behaves? Again, not forgivable. You'll see what happens to him, later on in the books. This is not a man whose actions we condone.
Fine. Make me your villain.
It seems that Alina is pretty confident in her choices by the end of season 1, especially after the Darkling committed a small genocide and then fused antlers to her collarbone. Objectively, Mal might be the better man for her.
They went through that horrible thing of both losing their parents to the Shadowfold, and then they're connected by this. They grow up in an orphanage together. It's like that classic love story of like childhood friends. At the beginning of our story, perhaps didn't realize it, and that eventually do just fall totally in love with each other.
As you say, when you're an adult, you want someone who's going to take a bullet for you and a knife and all the other things.
And everything else.
On Alina's behalf. And you want someone who's pure heart, and there is no one with a bigger heart than Archie Renton.
Maybe Ben is just an Archie shipper, and honestly, we support it. And in actuality, the series made a much stronger case for both ships because we're allowed to see everyone's perspective and not everything just through Alina's point of view. And that wasn't the only major change that we saw from the book to the series. Let's start breaking down some of those differences. I would need a whole separate video to break down all of the differences between the novels and the series, but I do have a full breakdown on tvguide.com. We'll put a link down in the description. In this video, I do want to talk about a few big key ones. Let's start with that reveal in episode 4 that the Darkling's real name is Alexander. I mean, Ben Barnes just casually coming out with like, call me Alexander, as if book readers didn't have to go through 2.5 novels to find out that information. Seriously, show watchers, you have it so easy. What's interesting about them deciding to drop that information so early is that the name reveal in the books is actually a huge part of the Darkling and Alina connecting on a deeper level, when the Darkling is still trying to convince her to be on his side. The series is gonna have to come up with some other way for the Darkling to prove that he trusts Alina and that he wants her to be with him. Of course, the show has plenty of room to do something like that. A lot of the Darkling's backstory that we got in the series was mentioned in the books, but we didn't actually get to see play out. The whole thing with Luda and him creating the fold to save the Grisha was really dramatized for the series. There's plenty of information they can mine from that period of his life that we don't get a lot of information about in the books in order to convince Alina that he might actually be onto something. The Darkling wasn't the only one to get a more fleshed out backstory within the Shadow and Bone series. In the show, we got to see Inej's first kill, which again is mentioned in the Six of Crows novel, but it goes down very differently in the series. Inej's first kill is an event that is only briefly described in the Six of Crows novel. It happens in Ketterdam, and then she goes back to the Slat where she and the Crows live. And she cries about it because it's so heartbreaking and morally devastating. Kaz overhears her crying and stands outside the door debating whether he should go in to comfort her, and then ultimately decides not to because it would make him look too weak to the rest of the crew. None of that happened within the Shadow and Bone series. However, Inej's first kill was to save Kaz's life, which is going to be very instrumental in building their relationship going forward. And it's one of the most beloved ships in the Grishaverse. So we're very excited to see how that unfolds. And speaking of Kaz, what about that showdown between Kaz and the Darkling? That definitely wasn't in the books because the two never meet in the novel series. But I want to know how all of y'all feel about getting to see them on screen together. Tell me about your feelings in the comments. Now it's time to talk about season 2.
Just keep quiet about who I am. Where I go from here.
As Alina continues on her journey to figure out how to take down the Shadowfold and figure out the extent of her power, she's going to need some outside help. And outside help means Nikolai! Nikolai is a fan favorite character who gets introduced in the second Shadow and Bone book in the series, Siege and Storm. And while we can't tell you how he meets up with Mal and Alina because it's one of the greatest reveals in all of the Grishaverse, we can say that we are very excited to see who Netflix might cast to play this enigmatic character going into season 2. Nikolai is not the only face we want to see in season 2. Seeing all the Six of Crows characters without Wylan Van Eck was really hard in season 1. However, if Heiserer and Bardugo are hesitant to bring Jeu de Purem or adapt the Iceport heist into season 2, will we get to see Wylan? Our chances of seeing Wylan in season 2 are significantly less than us getting to see Nikolai, and our Wesper hearts are suffering for it. Maybe we should start a support group?
Just ask.
Honestly, we have so many questions about Shadow and Bone season 2. Namely, like, are we going to get a season 2? But we're just going to assume that Netflix would not deprive us of this awesomeness. After that, we need to know what exactly are the Six of Crows characters going to be up to if they're not breaking into the Ice Court? How long is it going to take Nina to actually get involved with Kaz, Inej, and Jesper, and will she tell them about Matthias? Secondly, we got introduced to the Apprat in season 1, but are we going to see him and his building of the following of Sancta Elena in season 2? Finally, what are the Darkling's next steps in trying to take over Ravka and the Grishaverse? Let us know what your burning questions are and what you most want to see in a potential Shadow and Bone season 2. And if you like this video and want to check out more of our content, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like.